And thanks, guys, for that shipper update there. Always great to get the band back together for a couple times here on FreightWaves now. Right now, we're going to welcome our next live guest. We've got Lorianne LaRocca with us, answering some big questions about Russian oil. Lorianne, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
And we know that Russia-Ukraine is top of the headlines, top of mind for most folks right now. And we've got some interesting stuff going on with some shipments of Russian oil. So we need to wonder now, why is this still being shipped and who's buying it?
Okay, well, all of it, we've got 8 vessels that are en route to the United States. One is actually going to be anchoring today in Delaware, and it could be either BPF Energy or possibly Delta. Now, what folks have to keep in mind of is these are tankers that, the stuff was loaded 30 days ago.
Yeah.
And so we're really right now at the moral of the question, right? Should the buyers be accepting the oil? Should they be selling it? But they can't sell it because no one's buying it. And so that's why you're seeing companies like Delta, right, saying they're not going to be making any further purchases. And so you've got 8 tankers coming today through the end of the month.
So these, so these have already been sold. They're going to anchor. Is that? I mean, so they're already sold. They're going to be consumed, right? But these were previous to the sanctions, et cetera. So this is kind of a information of, hey, let's not get crazy about why these 8 are here. This is not somebody sneaking oil. Although that'd be a difficult thing to do, Lorianne. I think sneak a tanker full of oil out of Russia these days.
It would be difficult. The interesting thing is you do have some tankers that are going to be coming. You've got 2 that are going to be anchored out of the port of New York, New Jersey in the next couple of days. But the ones that are later in the month, if the president does decide to join the ranks of the EU, UK, Malaysia, Canada, they have all banned products that are flown by the Russian flag and, more importantly, Russian products. And so if that stuff does come in, you could be vulnerable to sanctions, as well as, but from a buyer standpoint, you've got force majeure. So there is a way out of getting the product, but the fact of the matter is you are bringing this in, and it does have. There has been a lot of Twitter hate out there, a lot of LinkedIn rage about these companies buying the product. But again, it was from 30 days ago.
So, Laurie, how do you, and I asked this to Mark Scott from Arkansas on Tuesday, is, these companies serve humanity as well, right? So I get the Twitter hate, I get the anti-Russia, but what about Russians? Not necessarily hating all the Russians that are over there, protesting the war, et cetera, and those outside of there that are being negatively affected by some of these sanctions, et cetera. I mean, we got to consider that as well, correct?
We do, but at this point, it's like, Putin is persona non grata.
Yeah.
And so while you have the sanctions and we're seeing the oligarchs' yachts being seized and bank accounts being frozen, the fact that you now have the major container lines no longer moving product in or out, we've all been there with the pandemic trying to get toilet paper. And so this is really going to put Putin in a spot where you will probably see more outrage from the Russian people because they are going to suffer the consequences. And that, I believe, the tentacles of trade are going to constrict the oxygen out of the Russian economy.
Yeah.
So at that point where the economy gets so strangled that you're hurting your people that are internal to your country, is that would, to a reasonable leader, that would be something that could kind of be almost a breaking point to say, okay, this is hurting my people more than this is hurting the people that I'm trying to invade and get back on my side, right? Do you think that once that economic stranglehold takes place, that it'll be a big enough wake-up call, maybe not necessarily to Putin himself, but to the rest of the Russian leadership to try and maybe talk some sense into the end of this conflict?
That's the billion-dollar question. We really don't know. I mean, Putin has surrounded himself by yes men. And so who is really going to, have that fortitude to go to him and saying, listen, it's gone pretty far. We really don't know. I mean, it's really unfortunate of what we're seeing. And when you're seeing the deaths on both sides, It's very unfortunate. And we also have to look at the seafarers now that really can't get off their ships. If you're on a Russian flag ship right now, it's going to be exceptionally difficult to try to get home. And then more importantly, no one's really talked about it, the asylum issue. You've got Ukrainian seafarers who probably do not want to go back. And so you're going to have, this is from what I've been told from sources, even here in the United States, they're looking at the asylum factor of these men and women that are hailing from Ukraine.
That is,
it's a lot bigger than what we think.
Yeah, that is a lot bigger situation than what we think. And, you know, so we got all these ripple effects. We've got all this stuff that is incredibly, incredibly important, not only just from, you know, economic reasons and logistics and supply chain, but also humanitarian. But there's other things that are happening as well that are kind of, we've got some other issues to talk about here. Let's talk about the most immediate one, and I would think it would be the Suez Canal suddenly just raising tolls, right?
Yeah. Yeah, one of my sources over the weekend said, "Hey, did you see what happened with the Suez?" And I'm like, "What?" And, you know, in the dark of night, you know, they're seizing the opportunity to raise rates. And, you know, this is on the heels of rates that were expected. Remember, back in November, the Suez Canal said, "Hey, you know, we're going to be raising rates as of February 2022." But then they gave 2 days notice for every vessel. And you're looking at a 10% hike. And what does that mean? The trickle down effect is more inflation for everybody around the world, because who's going to be passing over the costs? The importers. And then who do the importers pass over? To us. And so it's going to be a very ugly situation for the time being.
So when we're looking at now these increased rates, you're going to have people get more creative if they don't want to be paying those rates. Do you see any kind of workarounds? Now you're losing a ton of avenues, right? You've got things that are struggling in the areas that are the ocean areas close to the Ukraine-Russia conflict. You've got now the Suez hikes, and I feel like folks are kind of running out of options, right?
It really is, because, you know, when I wrote about it, you know, in the column, go? Do you go around the Horn of Africa and then you pay through the nose with, you know, for your fuel? Or do you take the other bitter pill and pay the Suez? It's actually cheaper in some aspects to go through the Suez because, you know, you've got these 24-day backups in Hong Kong and other parts of China. And, you know, I was reading a report from one of my sources. COVID is exploding again in Asia. And you've got zero COVID measures. And we've all been there before. We know what that means. More delays. And so as an importer, you know, you're just going to have to see which horrid pill to swallow. And right now, it most likely is the Suez, and they're capitalizing on it.
Yeah, and Lori, then you're talking about COVID exploding, the Suez, we're talking Ukraine, but there's something else on the horizon as well, right? I mean, once you get it to LA, is there going to be someone there to run? Are there going to be any stevedores there? So anybody, you know what I'm saying?
You know. Oh yeah, you know, and I interviewed John Picari, you know, not too long ago about this, and you know, oh, by the way, he's gone. You know, and we have no fill-in for him. That's really the big question. And what we're seeing is we don't know come July 1st where the labor is going to be. You know, and it's been tough for those men and women as well. But what logistics providers are doing now is they have to start moving their trade because it takes 100 days to get your product. They're going to start moving more things to the East Coast, and look what's happening there. The congestion is just shifting, if you will. It's not getting any better. And for those who say, oh, yay, look, we don't have as many ships coming to LA, you kind of still do. They're just delayed because the hairball of trade is back over in China. So it really is just status quo.
And so with this, now you've got the labor negotiations where the contract will end in the end of June. And then if it doesn't get renewed, then you've got those issues with dock workers. And you've got groups now asking the White House to step in preemptively. And we're still about 4 months out from the end of these contract negotiations. Can you talk a little bit about what a step in would look like if the White House decided to put a little bit more hand, I guess, in the issue?
You know, when I talked to Picari about it, you know, he said they wanted this hands-off approach. But the problem is anytime that you have a change in government, okay, and Picari was talking to all the stakeholders, he had the relationships. he will be gone, okay? There's no one to fill in for him. So there's going to be a steep learning curve, and that takes time. So I don't see what are they going to do to try to secure these measures. But also from a labor side, we have been through so much. Yes, they need more money. If they do strike or if they do have an intentional slowdown, that does not look good for them either. So I think every stakeholder really has to think about this and get out of their own bubble, because you and I both know this is a highly bubbled, fractured industry. And it's amazing because everything has to work together in order to move smoothly.
Yeah, that's where the difficulty comes in. And that's why love having you on the show. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great weekend. And folks, listen, check out Lorianne LaRocco on LinkedIn, on American Shipper, on FreightWaves.com for all of this insight. She cuts through the BS and gives you how it really is the bottom line there. Thank you so much, Lorianne.
Thanks for having me, guys.